Humanity Matters.
Welcome back here to the Fog More in Humanity. I'm your host, Richard Acritelli, here on HMTV. Susanne is just, it's unbelievable, the stories, and it's unbelievable how you could present these stories in a great amount of detail, which is important. We're at the Holocaust Museum, and you talking to younger generations, educators, about the will to survive. And some of it could be luck, some of it being, perseverance and understanding certain things that you need to do, right? Now, off camera, I asked you, was there people that your father hid out with in the woods, right? And then they found their way back here to the United States. Now, the camaraderie must have been just amazing to see, right? I mean...
Well, one of the things that I learned, because as I told you about owning property, Jews weren't allowed to buy and sell property. Your handshake, your word was your bond. And if you say something, you better stick with it. So that sense of honesty, because you're really depending on the goodwill of others, Jews and non-Jews. And they both of them said to me, if it wasn't for the help of non-Jews, nobody would have survived. So when I heard them talk in the United States, he was with his brother and his older brother. And then there were, some of their friends and so on. At times they separated, at times they came back. When he, as far as I know, when he lived out in the woods, he was pretty much on his own. But then he was with other people, and he was invited to join a partisan group with the Russians. And it ended up that he said, I don't want to be in the front lines. He said, I'm going to take my chances out here in the woods. Yeah. So, but when they spoke about themselves as heroes. Whereas my mother didn't have that circle.
He was on the front lines of survival.
Exactly.
Right?
But he wasn't at the, he didn't have a gun pointed at his back by saying, you better run. And, but he was, like I said, a very strong, determined man. My mom was equally determined, if not even more so, but she didn't have that kind of, at least I never saw that kind of group to vent with. So a lot of it was kept internally for her.
Did she have any PTSD? Did your father have any PTSD? Was there certain things that they did, like you started picking up as a kid here in New York City?
Okay, we didn't know from the term PTSD. And one of the things people ask me, so what's it like to grow up as a child of Holocaust survivors? And my answer is, what do you mean, what's it like? Does anybody say to you, what's it like to grow up as the child of an American GI? You live with what you live with. You don't know to ask questions. I will say this, the PTSD, I would say I saw more in my mother than in my father, because she used to have nightmares. And ironically, as a child, I had nightmares. And they were the similar. I mean, I had heard enough to know to be afraid. Wow. So it took me a long, and by the way, in one of my dreams, I escaped.
Yeah.
And the minute I escaped in my dream, I never had a nightmare again.
Was your dad somebody just with the security of the family, right? Just, you want to make sure you're always safe.
Absolutely.
The doors were always locked.
You got that right.
You had money, food, right?
Yep. That, for both of them, security. And one of the things that I did learn from them was an extremely strong work ethic, because they didn't have relatives, I'm broke, help me out here. It just didn't exist.
Yeah.
So you have to be self-sufficient, you have to be self-reliant. And frankly, I like to think that's one of the very positive things that I took from my experiences, the importance of family, trusting each other, your word is your bond. And I have to say, I'm extremely proud of my 3 children, because not only are they very good children and kind children, they're not children anymore, they're in their 40s.
But you learned that from your parents. And
I passed it on, and they are. They really are. Because I look around and... they're really, each of them in their own way is a remarkable, hardworking person.
Now, we speak about like the nightmares, and that's a reminder of being in Auschwitz, being in the camps, selection, right? Making sure that you weren't there, right? Always that in the back of your mind, because it was a death camp. What were the other reminders that your mother and father had?
You know,
Would it be to what with the frostbite?
okay, the frostbite, my mom always said she had, you know, from being out in the cold, so and not having adequate shoes and clothes and so on. She would complain about her feet. My father, quote, had bad feet. But then again, I didn't attach that to a war situation. Do you know what I mean? Okay, my parents had bad feet, you know.
Yeah.
One of the things you want to talk about, my mom, after the war, now this was, actually, I'm almost 100% certain what I'm going to say now. When she was in Marisch Weisswasser and working, things were a little better. Some man, which she thinks it was Oskar Schindler, but she could never prove it, she had a toothache, took her to a dentist.
Really?
And they gave her dental care. And she ended up with having a gold tooth in the front of her mouth.
Schindler's Camp?
It wasn't, but she thinks that he might have come because he knew somebody. Somebody came and took her to a dentist outside the camp, which I don't understand. She could never explain, but she had a gold tooth.
And he was always proud of his roots from being in that part of Czechoslovakia, right?
So, you know, most women didn't have gold teeth, and she only had one. But I was always like, "Why do you have a gold teeth?" Well, eventually, she was in the United States. She had it replaced with a white, you know, cap. But you're saying like what markers? After a while, I didn't even see the numbers on her arm. It was just there.
Yeah,
you know. And I even once asked her. I said, "Why don't you have them removed?" And she said to me, "It doesn't matter." She said, "I always know where I was." You know, so it wasn't.
It doesn't matter if it's there or not.
It wasn't the physical manifestation. It's the internal mental manifestation.
Now, you look at your parents. They come over here. You're born in Germany, but
I was a baby. Yeah,
you're a baby. You're over here. What were the things that Americanized them? Was there a certain type of food that they liked here? Did your dad like a slice of pizza? Did he like the Yankees?
I did not. No. I did not grow up with pizza or cotton candy. My mother was a fabulous cook, and we ate at home most of the time. And Sundays, she made roast chicken with a potato kugel. I mean, food was good, but it was European good food. She made a great chocolate babka, you know, for special occasions. I mean, she was a great baker and all of that sort of stuff. So they really only started going out for dinner when they moved to Pelham Parkway in the Bronx, and they had their relatives and their friends, and then they would go out.
Did they get a house there?
Yeah, they bought a house.
And then where in the Bronx? In
the Bronx, in Pelham Parkway. Originally around Fordham Road in the Grand Concourse, there was an apartment. And then before that was another apartment.
How did they like being in a house?
They loved being in a house. They had their little garden. I mean, one of the things that I still love, they had a back porch, and there was a huge magnolia tree that covered most of the porch, and you didn't know where you were. You're just surrounded by trees. They were very big on gardens, on pretty. My mother had a fabulous sense of design, so, you know, she was always very forward-thinking.
But it was also a sense of pride in the house.
Yes, but she was always very, in terms of a design set, she was always very forward-thinking. I mean, one of the things, she would look at magazines, and I remember as a kid, you know, we didn't have tons of money. I mean, so we would go to this store, that store, and I remember this is like 1955, 56, and we'd go look at this fancy children's store, and they wanted a coat, $50, $60 for a coat for a kid, when the average person made a weekly salary of $35. You could have spent $60 on a little kid's coat. She would look at it, copy it. You know, I would have the exact same coat, still remember it with the velvet cuffs and collar, and she would just sew it for me.
Wow.
I mean, she made beautiful doll's clothes. I had lined doll's clothes with rhinestones for buttons. I mean, she was very, very talented that way.
Did your parents like traveling over here? Did they have that ability to do that?
Well, they were limited because of financial reasons. But
which is a big thing because they were relatively getting older in Europe with everything, and then they come here and have to get established and reestablished.
Exactly. So I think they would have liked to have traveled, but the big thing is when they went to Israel. That was huge. That was like the trip. And it meant the world to them. So that was.
Did they see family in Israel, or was it?
I think there was one relative, a distant relative they might have seen, that there was somebody from the town, somebody that they talked about, but there wasn't many relatives.
But it was just a chance of going there.
To be in Israel, to see the wall, they were supposed to go to Israel, remember, right after the war.
And they said they put
that aside because, you know, financial reasons, but they did travel. I mean, occasionally, we did rent a house in Far Rockaway, and I went there every summer till I went to camp because they loved the water. So I learned to. My mom never swam, but my father.
My
taught me
family
how to
had
learn to swim.
like one of those cottages
Right,
down there
right, yeah,
on the walks.
right, yeah, that was the bungalows. But we didn't
Yeah.
go to a bungalow. We went to a year-round
Yeah,
house.
yeah.
And my friends lived there year-round, and I loved going to Rockaway and the beach, and that was I just loved the beach and the water.
Now, you have your doctorate, which
Yeah.
means that you're very well educated and
Thank you.
accomplished, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, your parents, they must have thought the world of that.
For my parents, my father in particular, because he did not have the opportunity to have a real thorough education, for him, education was everything. For my mother as well. But for my mother, it was get married. That's very
Sure.
important. Have children, keep the tradition going. My father would always say to me, get an education, then you can get married, but make sure you get it. And so they were very, very proud. And my father died before I finished my doctorate. And the last thing he asked me was to please finish my dissertation. which
So
I
he
did.
dies 1962.
Yeah.
He had to be born right around the
was-
turn of the century, right?
He was born, no, my mother was born in 1920, and my father was born in 1914.
1914.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, by the way, as a total aside, I still get requests for my mother to vote, and I break out laughing. I said, "You idiots! I told you that she died after she died.
Yeah.
You're still sending me all this stuff. She'd be 106 by now."
So your education was big for
School
them,
was
right?
everything. I grew up with school was everything. You do the best you can, as hard as you can. School is the ticket out of poverty. School is the ticket to success and happiness. That was really, when I was 5 years old in kindergarten, I had some relatives, distant relatives that went to Hunter College. And in those days, Hunter was free. And my mother's family had to pay for her to go to high school. And she'd say, there's such a great country. And she always said, you're going to go to Hunter because at Hunter, education is free. I ended up not going there. But education, you sacrifice anything and everything for education. She said she never would have survived if it wasn't for her languages. In the camps, people came from Hungary, from this. She spoke many languages.
Wow.
And
she kept them, huh? Did she?
Oh, absolutely. She was brilliant. I mean, I don't mean that in a, she was extremely bright, extremely bright.
Did I mean, this is probably maybe a no, but did especially your mom being in Auschwitz, was there anything that she kept from the camp?
You couldn't keep anything. Absolutely
No, but like
nothing.
when she moves from there to Czechoslovakia, it was really just the clothing on her back.
Clothes on
right?
her back, you couldn't keep anything. No.
And at that point in the war, she probably
Yeah,
burnt
no.
that stuff.
She had no control over
Yeah.
anything. I mean,
Because I asked, because we're at the
Yeah.
museum and you
Right.
see.
The only thing that I do have, my father's sister, one of his, knitted him a cap for the snow, which I'd never seen before, so I'll describe it. It was ear fluffs, it was navy blue, and I probably still have it somewhere. And we usually wear them around the back, or it was crisscrossed across the top of your head like this. So it literally sat on your head, so you couldn't lose it, and it would always keep your ears warm. And growing up, I remember he wore that as a kid under his hat, because men wore fedora
Sure.
hats, and so when it was in the wintertime, he always put his little ear contraption on under his hat because he never wanted to be cold. I had relatives, just second and third cousins that went camping. My father said, "I'm not camping. I camped enough.
Did enough
Ain't never
enough."
happening. I either go first class or I don't go."
Yeah, yeah.
That was,
So, the snow up here gets bad. And I'm sure there was a lot of points where you just, let me have an iced tea, let me
Yeah.
have a coffee.
Yeah. No, that's one of the things I went back to Germany a number of times. In fact, I took some classes at the Goethe Institute. And that's one of the things that I remarked on. And I remember this is 50 years ago. When you walk into a restaurant, everything was about Gemütlichkeit, finesse, taste. You'd say hello to your neighbor. You'd go in for a cup of coffee, a little demi-tasse of coffee and a little piece of cake.
Sure.
But everything was about taking your time and enjoying the moment, savoring the walk in the park, savoring the company. It was a much slower paced, less materialistic, frankly, environment than what we have here, and certainly where our children grew up.
Can I ask you, I know we spoke about it before, that you went to Auschwitz, your parents survived the Holocaust, you grew up learning about it in terms of you looking at your parents' feet, in terms of the frostbite, your mom's got the number tattooed on her. What was it like for you to go back? I mean, it's not like, you're not going, it's a very I would imagine, it's a very tragic place to go to. It's you're not necessarily looking forward to going there, but you feel as though you have to go see it.
Two things. The first time we went, the Cold War was just officially over, so it was relatively dangerous to go.
Did your parents have any? Did they ever go back before the Cold War was over?
No.
No desire to go back.
No, there was no reason to go back. But I wanted to go, and versus I rented a car, and thank God I could drive shift. So I rented a car, and we went back there. But I had my daughter with me, and I don't remember how old she was at the time, but she was still a teenager, and all I knew was. I didn't get my mother's story until the Holocaust Museum opened in Washington, D.C. Till that point, there were bits and pieces that I couldn't put together. I finally got the timeline right, and I got that part out. When we went there, all I knew was I had to be strong for my daughter. And I didn't hope that my mother wouldn't break down because I didn't know what her reaction would be. And I still remember the room with all the glasses and all the toys and whatever they confiscated. And I literally was numb. And I was happy that I was numb because I knew if I wasn't numb, I would break down and I wouldn't be there and couldn't be there for my mother or my daughter. So I didn't really process it till we got back home because it was just so painful. And that's one of the things that when I used to teach, and it still bothers me to this day, the United States knew what was going on. There were reports of what was going on. They smuggled reports out that nobody... And it was actually Breckinridge Long, who was the Undersecretary of State, who said, we don't want Jews. And Eleanor Roosevelt said, please, just let in the children. And FDR...
USS St. Louis.
St. Louis. FDR just turned a blind eye and said, I can't do it. They're just Jews. I mean, there was such anti-Semitism.
Which is interesting because his Secretary of the Treasury was Morgenthau.
Yes.
And he had to be concerned about anti-Semitism, and if he said too much.
But Morgenthau was a German Jew, and the distinction between Western German Jews and the Polish Jews were considered scum, uneducated, dirty Jews. So there was a real split between them, and I guess he was protecting his own position. I mean, and again, I don't want to judge, but I am judging the United States. Why didn't they let Jews in? The only country that said they would accept Jews was the Dominican Republic at the Evian conference. And they said they would take 1,000 people. Everybody else said 0.
And Hitler said, see, nobody wants these people, and then you got the Madagascar plan, all craziest.
Why couldn't they have at least let the St. Louis ship in?
Yeah.
And so when they point fingers...
I think the worst part of the St. Louis was they were so close to the United States.
Yeah, they were within 100. They could see the shoreline from Cuba.
And those people went back just to get killed.
And exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So that's why, when they talk about things now and then, I said, don't be so quick to point a finger. But I never understood. My mother would always say, she was a little, I don't want to say she was paranoid, but she would always say things like, you never know. And I would say, oh, Ma, and this,
I think that was
the
one of
United States. But now I know exactly.
The greatest criticisms were there were Jews in places like Auschwitz that said, we'd rather die from American bombs than being led to the gas chambers knowing that something was being done.
Exactly.
We have I built this military history museum in Rocky Point. And we have a Jewish American pilot. His family came out from Long Beach, and he wore the Hebrew dog tags. He flew 60 missions from southern Italy. And then in the museum, I have the range of like where they, those areas of Italy where they went. And they went northern Italy, Austria, southern Germany, Yugoslavia. And then the range was into Poland. And, it was one of those things they knew. I mean...
what was the argument? We don't want to waste our ammunitions on the Jews. We need them for the war.
And also the quickest way for the Jews to survive was to win the war.
They just had to bomb the railroad tracks. That
You're
would have
sending
slowed
up
things
armadas of planes night and day.
Yep.
And, Roosevelt, I guess he was considered a pretty good president, but even good presidents make some very serious mistakes.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was one of them. And I remember they heard a report, and both him and Churchill said, this man is crazy. Nothing like this is going on. And then the reports were coming out, coming out. And
What about the was it the Berger brothers who rented Madison Square Garden to alert everybody? They filled up the stadium, and it was actually Stephen Wise, who was the Americanized, German Jew, who said no. They would people knew,
and then
it
you
was
had
buried.
Fritz Kuhn, the American Führer, where Meyer Lansky sent the goons in to break it apart, and it was
anti-Semitism.
Yeah, it was not and then a lot of the American officers, because Majdanek was liberated.
Majdanek?
I'm saying it wrong.
Majdanek.
Majdanek is liberated in July of 1944. Auschwitz is liberated in January of 1945. You had a lot of American officers that had no idea what was in front of them, and they knew that this was out there, and
thank God for General Eisenhower, who made them take pictures and bring
walk
them there
through
in person, walk through, because if not, nobody would believe it.
Yeah, and Eisenhower, who was a very talented writer, strong writer, he goes, they're going to consider this some sort of lie that only a couple people were killed and so on. And he said, because American soldiers were going into Germany, and they started looking around and saying, the Germans look like us, they're middle class, they have nice homes. The house gets destroyed. They're out there the next day cleaning it up. They started saying, well, what are we doing in here? And Eisenhower goes, you may not know why you're over here, but now you know what you're fighting against. And then you had Americans who said, I survived the war. And then they were incensed at what they saw. They couldn't believe it. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's really inhumanity. I mean, and that's why when I went back to Poland the first time, I saw the man that lured my father's sister into her barn and then ratted her out. And Helga Futowski pointed him out.
Oh, he was still living.
He was still alive. And I said, I have to. She goes, stop. She goes, I live in this town. When you leave, I still have to live here.
Yeah.
And I never forget the reaction. I said, this thing is still called a human being, but he's not human. He's a devil in the shape of a human being, because what he did was inhuman. For 50 cents, for $1, he turned somebody in. I mean, a human being, a girl, a young girl, an attractive young girl, just
who's vulnerable,
right? Because she's Jewish.
Yeah.
That's when I hear all of these horror stories all over the world, wherever they are. We make choices. And I always say the people who committed the dastardly deeds, they have to be held accountable. Not their children, not their relatives, but the people who actually did it.
And that was the importance of Nuremberg, was one of the first times you just can't pass the buck and say, well, I was ordered to do this.
I want to say a few things about my work at the UN. So it started out that because I was at Dowling and involved with intergenerational activities, I was involved with the Committee on Aging, and that became a subcommittee and then an independent committee on intergenerational relationships. And so I met some women, and there was a caucus of Jewish NGOs, non-governmental organizations. And they were kind of floundering, and I said, look, unless you get an official position, whatever you say or do, it just doesn't matter. So we worked very, very hard. We became an established committee, a recognized committee of what's called CONGO, the Conference of NGOs. And it's the Committee to End Anti-Semitism and Promote Peace. And so we started out by having programs, because part of our mission is education and so on, working with other NGOs. And we're going to continue to do that. But this is our project.
And you do like your time, right? At the UN.
I have to tell you,
it's got to be an interest.
If what my goal is, our goal is, succeeds, I will say, besides my family, it's the most important thing I can ever do with my life. So there are 2 resolutions that came out of the General Assembly that condemn Islamophobia and how to measure Islamophobia. Yeah. All well and good. How many are there condemning anti-Semitism? 0.
Yeah,
so we are working to get a resolution passed. I won't tell you how hard it is, how many bumps in the road there are, how many roadblocks there are, but so far we've overcome a number of them, and that is our goal. And they work very, very slowly. And I will tell you, many of the people there, are anti-Semitic. There's just no other word for it. My mother always said it's just hidden. It's hidden. I always thought she was paranoid. Now when I look at what's going on in the United States, when I look at what's going on in the UN, she was not paranoid. It could happen anywhere.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, Nazism started in the most educated and
Industrialized
modern educated countries in Europe, and how these people
they were
could buy this
democratically
BS.
elected.
Yes,
Yep.
how these people could buy this BS is absolutely beyond me. Well, now I know. Look at what's happening all around us. There's a nexus of communism and Islamism, extreme. And I always said to my husband, we'll never be attacked by an outside country overtly. It'll all happen from within. I said this to him years ago.
Well, hopefully that doesn't.
But that's what I see happening all around me.
Yeah.
And I'm a retired college professor.
Yeah.
And I went to graduate school in the 1960s. And all these books that they're reading, talking about, I said, I read them all.
Sure.
But I questioned it. I questioned it way back in the 1960s.
Yeah.
I said other people didn't. They just bought this crap lock, stock, and barrel. And my feeling as an educator, you have to read what's out there. You have to know what your potential enemies are thinking and doing. Because if not, you don't know how to respond. But now, free thought, independent thought in many different fields is just condemned. You have to either go lockstep with the common, thesis, or they ghost you, or they, say you're irrelevant. And that to me is our biggest failing today. Everybody says education, education. I'm all for education. I grew up with education. I mean, you can ask Bernie. My mother always ended all her speeches with how important education is. And I totally agree with that. But it has to be quality education. So UNRWA, when they run the UNRWA schools, I have one of their textbooks in my house. And it says, okay, let's teach basic math. 2 dead Israelis plus 2 dead Israelis make how many dead Israelis? That's what they're teaching babies. Well, that's what we have to stop.
This stuff gets out of hand, and it's,
And what you're taught as a child really makes an impact on you. So for me, it's all about values. If we don't teach basically the golden rule, which is I can tell you, in the 13 major religions of the world, and there's some version of the golden rule in every one of them. If we don't go back to that, the world is going downhill.
Yeah, it is definitely peaks and valleys and everything else, right? So, but Susanne, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much.
Very spirited conversation, and thank you for sharing your family's story and the importance of it. And well, I hope to have you back again.
Thank you. I'm honored that you asked me to have this conversation.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
This has been Rich Acritelli here on the HMTV with the Fog of War and Humanity. Join us next time. Have a great day.
If you enjoyed exploring the information, history, and stories in today's conversation, be sure to check out our other podcasts here on HMTV. Please subscribe, share, and stay connected for more engaging conversations.
Humanity Matters.